Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Good morning, everybody. Well, it sure is cold out there. I have to tell you, I was listening about the news and hearing what was going on, of course, up north, from Maine down to North Carolina, and I guess I'm not so cold down here in Florida, even though it's 50 degrees here. Okay, so we're going to start off with someone in New York, Staten Island to be sure, Darwin Porter. So, Darwin, are you cold?
Listen, you're bragging on this 50 degrees. A CNN weather forecaster said the Northeast is now experiencing temperature equal to the surface of the planet Mars. So... Actually, it's sad, really, because people are dying. I mean, it is incredibly cold, and going outside, you do so at your own risk, but the world has to go on. Anyway, I want to put on a more cheerful note for the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And talk about what's going on in the entertainment world, and there is a hell of a lot going on, and all the awards begin tomorrow night with the Golden Globes, which will be broadcast, and I think the competition is going to be severe. There have been some bad years, and suddenly, miraculously, some of the best films of this century are being released. And one point that I've noticed, I call it the 2017, the year of the woman. It is incredible. In fact, women are the stars of the top grossing films of the year, and that's not happened in, I would say, about 4 decades.
So, for example, what shows are they?
Well, I will tell you just one point, though. It's also not the year of the ingenue. Baby boomer actresses are, for example, the average age of the 7 top contenders for Best Supporting Actress is 55 years old. So something's going on out there. But
wait a minute, before you go on, in my opinion, the Churchill movie is the best. I mean, I hope that wins the Academy Award.
Well, I must say we agree.
Oh, good.
I will. I'm sorry. No, not the best movie. We'll go to
actor. The best actor.
Just to get back to your first question, the top 3 grossing films would be Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Then Disney's Beauty and the Beast with Emma Watson, and Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot. I've never heard of a woman named Gal. That was a politically incorrect term for women in the 40s.
Oh, really?
But as the Amazon warrior goddess, she is the highest-grossing superhero film of all time.
Really? I happen to have loved that. Thank you. I had forgotten her, but you're right. I loved that.
But I want to tell you, though, the Star Wars, the latest Star Wars movie, has a very personal meaning for me because I think I told you I'm completing this month the mother-daughter saga of Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher.
Yes.
Oh, God, what a story. I mean, what happened to those two is sort of unbelievable. And as the world knows, they died within 48 hours of each other. And that was a grim ending for my book, but now I can end on Carrie Fisher being in one of the highest-grossing films of this century. So,
well, go back to that. Wait a minute. Let me ask you a question. Why did she die so suddenly? Was that willed?
Why did Debbie die so suddenly?
No, her daughter, Carrie. No, Debbie. I'm so sorry. You're right. Why did Debbie die so soon after her daughter died? Yes, that was my question.
Well, people say it's a broken heart, and that may be true. But I mean, there are cases where people do die of a broken heart. For example, many cases, say of an older couple, the husband will die and the wife will die soon thereafter.
Yeah, I understand.
But Debbie had been in very failing health.
Oh, okay.
So it's not. I mean, probably the extra stress was what was needed to push her over the top.
I see. Okay.
But I'll go on. And now, oddly enough, the top comedy of the year, called Girls Trip, that grossed the most money, had its world premiere in Miami in June at the American Black Film Festival. And Time magazine called it one of the top films of 2017, and it featured 4 women. So women were doing very well, which brings up the question, what happened to the men?
They're hiding in their caves.
I tell you, I've had this problem with you before here. Is there any way you can speak louder? Or
Okay, we'll try to turn it up because I hear you perfectly well. But now we'll turn it up. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can. Okay, all right. Now, Hollywood lost millions and millions of dollars on male-dominated films of action heroes, which they thought would be big budget breakthroughs, but they all ended up in the well of loneliness. Take, for example, Justice League. Ben Affleck came back as Batman, but he fell from the sky. And The Mummy with Tom Cruise remained buried in the graveyard of disasters. And this time, Johnny Depp, repeating his role of Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, it drowned, and he desperately needs a hit. And Baywatch came out with all this big advertising, but Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron found not too many people wanting to watch the action on the bay. The saddest thing, I think, was for the English director Ridley Scott. He's been one of my favorites. He nominated for Best Director Oscar for 3 films, including one of my favorites, Thelma and Louise, and Gladiator and Black Hawk Down. And he had a big hit in 1979 called Alien, and he tried to repeat it in 27 with Alien, The Covenant, but it bombed. Yet at the same time, he did this really great film out there called All the Money in the World. It was about the 1973 kidnapping of John Paul Getty's grandson, and he wouldn't pay the $17 million ransom. And Christopher Plummer has been nominated for various awards as J. Paul Getty. It cost $50 million, but people didn't show up. I think worldwide it's grossed $12 million. It's getting a lot of awards, but audiences are staying away.
I don't know. I don't like the idea, I guess.
Yeah, well, they didn't. Now, back to what the fun thing is. I have my opinions of what the Oscars, what I would want them to be. I doubt if the Academy will agree with me, but I prefer Dunkirk as Best Picture, and Gary Oldman for his brilliant portrayal of Churchill in The Darkest Hour, and Judith Dench for Victoria and Abdul. Brilliant performance. But Dunkirk had special meaning for me because I've not only been to Dunkirk several times, but that was one of the great dramatic stories of World War II. It took place after the fall of France in 1940, and about 300 or to 400,000 soldiers appeared on the beach, and those brilliant military geniuses, Hitler and Hermann Göring of the Luftwaffe, could have really bombed them. And for some idiot reason, they didn't, and because it turned the tide of the war. I mean, they could have, England possibly would have been invaded. So Christopher Nolan brought that wonderful story of heroism and to the screen, and I think he did a fabulous job. It was a very moving film. Now, Dench, Judith Dench wrote me a wonderful letter one time, and I loved her, and she was born in Yorkshire in 1934, and she's played everything from Juliet to Lady Macbeth, but most of the world knows her for playing M in all those James Bond films.
Right. That's true.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can hear you really well. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time, so I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, because you're perfect. You don't worry, you are perfectly clear.
Okay. She was a 7-time Oscar nominee, and she won as playing Queen Elizabeth I in Shakespeare in Love. It would be ironic if playing another English Queen, Victoria, she wins again. But she inhabits the role of Victoria. Now, I've probably seen every Victoria ever put into films, from Irene Dunne to Helen Hayes, but I'll tell you, Miss Dench, in fact, she inhabits the role so brilliantly. She not only captures the imperial quality, but she makes Victoria a real woman, subject to pain and suffering and even love. And Gary Oldman as Churchill in The Darkest Hour. It sounds like I'm really into the British for these awards.
I know that, but I feel the same as you.
I'll tell you, in 1940, England was really going under. It really was. Had Hitler not made the decision to invade Russia, I think England could well have been invaded. They'd have to be fighting in the streets because they simply didn't have the manpower. And then, of course, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and it was the beginning of the end. But Ullman, I've followed him in his career for years. He's another baby boomer. He was born in 1958. But I've seen him in those Harry Potter films. He can play Count Dracula. He's played Beethoven. He's played Hamlet, a gangster. And get this, I saw him in a film called JFK, where he played Lee Harvey Oswald.
Really?
Yes. But now he'll never get another role like Churchill. I mean, he just burnt up the screen. He was so brilliant.
But wait a minute. I don't really know what he really looks like. Did they just make him up so well that he looked like Churchill?
Perfectly. In fact, the makeup artist should get an award because, but it was more than just the makeup. I mean, you know, again, I've seen, maybe 40, 50 movies of actors imitating Churchill. And he's the best. He's the best I've ever seen. And he deserves an Oscar, I think. Now, if it had not been for Miss Dench and Mr. Oldman, I would award Oscars to Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks.
For The Post.
The movie. I don't know if you've seen The Post.
Not yet. It's not down here. It's next week.
Oh, it's next week?
Yeah, I'm dying to see that.
I, as a journalist, am fascinated, but it's called A Love Letter to the First Amendment, and it has some relevance today. And Meryl Streep, of course, she's won more Oscars than anybody. She delivers a perfectly controlled performance as Katharine Graham, who was the publisher of the Washington Post, and she and Ben Bradley, the editor, broke the the Pentagon Papers, which first came out in the New York Times, and they were released by Daniel Ellsberg, and through enormous scandal about the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, and the Nixon White House were taking there to court to suppress Katharine Graham and John Mitchell, who was the Attorney General at the time, warned Miss Graham that this is sort of indelicate, but he said, you're getting your tit caught in a ringer. Miss Mitchell was known for his delicacy.
Well, but wait a minute. Did you know Katharine Graham?
What's that?
Did you know Katharine Graham?
Oh, I only met her at two parties, one given by Truman Capote, but she was a woman I greatly admired. She now is a towering figure in journalism, and she inherited everything from her father, and she was just sort of thrown into the business, and Bradley really helped guide her through these difficult days. And so she decided to take on these men, and in the end, she won. And again, this Meryl Streep, I don't think there's any actress in America who ever comes near. I mean, Meryl Streep can play almost anybody, and she has,
Right. Yeah, I think she's fantastic, actually.
Yeah. But now there are a lot of oddball films that are getting a great deal of attention. For example, Call Me By Your Name. Millions of dollars have gone into advertising, and it's a homosexual theme that somehow has transcended that and is had an enormous crossover into straight audiences. And tomorrow night it's up for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, and it's the story of a 17-year-old boy who is involved in a love affair with Armie Hammer, who plays a 26-year-old man. But it's not so much homosexual as being a story that love happens in very strange ways and in very strange places. And it is absolutely brilliantly done, and is being nominated for numerous awards from all sorts of groups.
Okay. What's next?
Now, the other very strange thing is called The Shape of Water. And I don't know if it's come in your area yet.
No, I haven't heard of it.
Well, it's Sally Hawkins is the 41-year-old British actor, and she's a mute in this film who falls in love with a merman. Now, I've seen pictures with mermaids, but you don't see a lot of pictures of a woman falling in love with a merman, or you might call him an amphibian humanoid.
Huh.
It's actually, I know it sounds bizarre, but it's a strange love story.
And what's the name of it again?
It's getting millions of advertising and big box office. So it's also up tomorrow night for various Golden Globe awards.
Okay.
I'll go on if you can.
Yeah,
hear
I
me.
want you to. I can hear you. I wonder why you can't hear me. It's very interesting. I don't know what's happening here at the studio.
I don't know. Maybe it's the snow up here.
I don't know, but we hear you perfectly fine, so just keep going.
Good. Then I'll keep talking for the few more.
No, you've got like another 10 minutes, almost.
Yeah, a lot of people are calling the upcoming Oscars tainted gold because of all this sexual harassment scandals, which are certainly not confined to Hollywood. And that brings up a problem with, it's been the tradition that the Best Actor of 2016 will present the Best Actor Oscar to the 2017 winner. But in this case, it's Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother, he won last year for Manchester by the Sea, and he deserved it. It was very brilliant, but he's had to settle some sexual harassment cases. And his brother, I think I once did a column for the BoomerTimes.
You did, yes, on Ben Affleck.
His romantic problems
yes.
with women. Now, what I don't understand is these two brothers are widely desirable and sought after, and they have hundreds of girls after them. I mean, I don't know why they would have to sexually harass anybody, because if anything, they're being harassed. And from many of their lovers reported that they're great in the sack, so they should be like Tom Jones, who, when he was in his heyday as a singer, he had to have 2 bodyguards to protect him from the women going after him.
That's great.
But we never understand the ways of Hollywood. Now, just to conclude, it's almost sad that there are so many people this year who are probably delivering the performance of their life, and you know, there are many times when very lesser awards were given to people in minor roles. But I'll just give you an example. Cynthia Nixon as the poet Emily Dickinson. This is one of the great roles, and it probably won't attract a big box office, because in high school we used to talk about Emily Dickinson a lot, but I haven't heard her name mentioned in the last 40, 50 years. I believe back in those days we were more literate than this was before the cell phone, and we read books and stuff. And she inhabits again the role of Emily Dickinson. It's a tender, moving film. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal gives the best performance of his life in this movie called Stronger. It's set during the Boston Marathon bombings, and he plays a young man, a blue-collar worker, who loses both of his legs and has to have them amputated. And I don't know. The scenes are absolutely grueling, but he pulled it off. And I mean, if they gave out 18 Oscars, I think he would win one of them. A role like that is very, very hard to pull off. The Academy sometimes has shown a preference to giving Oscars to people with disabilities, like Jane Wyman played a deaf mute in Johnny Belinda and won the Oscar, and there have been other examples of where deaf mutes and whatever crippled people have won, but I don't know about this year. It's going to be fun to watch, and certainly anyone who's still up tomorrow night, I would definitely tune in to see how things are going to go with the Golden Globes. Now, sometimes the Golden Globes have been a harbinger of who's going to win the Oscar, but then again, they depart wildly from the Oscar nominees. So I think it's going to be fun to watch. There are right now so many adult films that I once talked to Lee Remick at a party, and she said, I've dropped out of films because they don't make films for adults anymore. She said, if they ever start making films for adults again, I'll come back to the screen. Well, Lee is not with us today, but I wish he could be around to see the numerous films released in the last 6 weeks where Hollywood just seems to have rediscovered itself. And I have a list right now of 30 films that I've seen several, because living in New York you get to see early previews, and I have 30 more to see that I am very, very anxious to see, and I'm glad they're coming back. I'm glad baby boomer actors are finding work, and so it's not all going to be turned over to the children.
Darwin, Porter, it's interesting. I don't know if you've written your February article yet, but it'd be wonderful maybe to put all those into one column, because I'd like to go see a lot of the movies that you talked about. I don't even know them.
Oh, yes. Oh, you suggest maybe I should do a column?
Yes, on all the ones. Just name them, because I don't think a lot of us know about them.
Well, I will. I definitely will. And, I can cover only a few of them, but in a space, but I will do that, and you'll be getting it soon.
Good.
I said, sometimes in New York, there's a certain film club, and also if you sometimes write about films, the producers will send you a copy. Often you have to return it. You're not supposed to resell it or give it away, but they'll send you. And so sometimes you get to, like if you're Harrison Ford, he gets all these films delivered directly to his home, and he doesn't have to go out and brave the cold. Of course, in California, he's not that cold. But anyway.
Well, maybe you can.
Here I am, and I'm happy. It sounds like I'm always taking up for older people, but so
that's okay.
I am, and I'm happy to see that so many people are finding work, particularly older actresses whom I've always, my favorite, even as a little boy, I favored older actresses. I don't know why. I was the only little 9-year-old in Miami watching Bette Davis movies, but I was.
Oh, I love it. You can keep going on if you want, because I'm on after you and I'm just going to talk. So I love having you talk. Do you have more to talk about?
Oh, Anita, I could talk forever. But I'm also interested in what's happening in the publishing world, because I have done, I sort of have this side hobby. I don't know if I have time to pursue it, but I love reading books about American presidents. And I've written some myself, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, John F. Kennedy, and Chester A. Arthur. I'm still the president of the Chester A. Arthur fan club, whose membership is dwindling rapidly. And presidents have fascinated me, and the current explosion of Michael Wolff's book. I have never seen a book advertised so widely on people. I mean, not paid advertising. I don't know if you've been tuned into all the cable news.
I am, but wait, I want to stop you a minute on that. When you wrote your book, you were so afraid that you were going to get sued. So it's nothing is, I read it. It was fabulous, but he didn't come after you.
Well, I was not afraid because I've studied presidential libel. It was, I found out that my distributor at the time, the idea that Trump was going to sue me, he sued two writers back in a long ago, but once you become president, you almost go beyond the protection of libel laws. That even was a decision decided about Elizabeth Taylor when she sued for libel, and a judge told her, Miss Taylor, everything in the world has been written about you. You're no longer able to sue for libel. Well, Trump, the fact that I libeled Trump is now ridiculous. I later told the owner of the company, who was a great Trump supporter, I said, my book now sounds like a tribute to him. In fact, it was mentioned the other night on MSNBC on Joy Reid, is one of the newscasters.
Yes.
On MSNBC.
Yes.
And she mentioned the title, "The Man Who Would Be King." And actually, that's coming into vogue now because some people are talking about Mr. Trump wanting to be king.
Absolutely. He thinks he is. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get political here.
What's that?
I don't want to get political. You keep talking. I'm going to be quiet.
No. It's not. I'm talking now about not so much political, but the publishing industry that will, the Clintons, when they were in office, they generated a lot of books, including one by me. I met her down about 10 blocks from here when she appeared at a rally, and I said, Miss Clinton, I'm writing a book about you. And she said, please be kind. And actually, the thing that my book will be, all these books that are coming up, and there will be dozens, but they will mostly take place in the White House, or what happened in the White House. In fact, 2 or 3 books are now being shopped, and he's only been president for a year, but there will be many books to follow. And I think the most interesting thing, and I should do something about this one time, about how there's even talk of a dynasty. And I thought that I had virtually heard everything that was in the Wolf book because I'm a cable news junkie. The only thing that I hadn't heard was that about a possible Trump dynasty with the agreement that Ivanka would run for president in 2020, and then before her husband, who would then follow, Jared would then follow in 2028. Now, there have been other attempts at dynasties. In fact, the Bush dynasty ended with the failure of Governor Jeb Bush in Florida to get the nomination. So it's interesting how this has happened a few times in American history. But there'll be a lot of books out there. The one thing that mine is different, it doesn't have anything to do with his being president. I went back to the beginning of the grandfather Trump and the Trump dynasty. Someone is still shopping a movie about the grandfather who went to the Alaska Gold Rush with prostitutes and food to serve to the prospective miners. And then I wrote a book of how Trump slayed all of the people who ran against him, including Little Marco and lying Ted Cruz and crooked Hillary. And now it's sloppy Stephen.
Oh, yeah, right. So let me ask you a little bit about that book coming out. I know he's trying to sue and get it stopped. It'll never happen. It's out there. So what's going to happen now?
Oh, Mr. Trump has threatened 20 lawsuits. I think he only pursued 2. The trouble that he found out in the one libel suit that he did some years back is that he was called upon to give depositions. And that's a very embarrassing thing, and certain things he had to reveal that during the depositions that he would like to have kept covered up. I think it's just a threat.
Excuse me, wait a second. Wait a minute. Let me ask you a question. Didn't Bill Maher didn't he sue Bill Maher?
Yes, but it didn't go to court.
Right.
It was just a threat. That a cease and desist. I've had those. For example, when it was announced that I was coming out with a book on Katharine Hepburn, I received that same threat. But I had my attorney contact them and said, in case you don't know it, Miss Hepburn is dead, and only live people can sue for libel. And also, you misspelled the name of your client. It's Catherine with an A, not an E.
Oh, I love it. You're so good.
I never heard from them again. And also, the Merv Griffin estate sent out a letter like Trump's lawyers did. And again, I reminded them that Merv Griffin was dead. And a lot of people are under the impression that a wife or a son or daughter can sue, and they can't. I mean, for example, someone could die, and then you could write that they were a serial killer or a child molester, and a wife or spouse can't sue for libel. You can only sue for libel if your heart is beating. So. And in fact, after that experience that I had with that CEO who was a big Trump fan, he sent me a memo. He said, in the future, Mr. Porter, would you write only about dead people? But there will be many books proposed. For example, that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, will write his memoirs. Of course, a lot of memoirs are for are self-justification, and so it's like their side of the story, and they're not critical memoirs because very few people. I've had some. In fact, I'm bound never to tell, but I wrote 2 movie star bios, and I wouldn't have wanted my name on them anyway because they were not really truthful. I tried to make them truthful, but I was paid to do it, and I was told what to write. And in fact, the really good and spicy stuff didn't get into the book.
Of course. So, Darwin, so let me ask you now. So the book is out there, and it's already sold. They can't even keep up with these sales.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, this Michael Wolff, I think he did. I got a copy. I haven't read it yet. He did a book on Rupert Murdoch, who hated the book, and but the fact that he was allowed for a journalist. Such access to the White House, that's unheard of. I was amazed how that happened. Now that is unique, but again, much Fox News is really coming down hard on the book, but then particularly Sean Hannity. But I expected him to do that. But he's actually quoting people, and but again. I keep saying, what's the big news? We knew that already. I mean, if you've been watching the right channels and things, I mean, many of these stories have come out already, but never quite like this in a book form. So I think the man will probably make $5 million in sales, and
he said, I listened to a tape. I listened to him being interviewed on NPR, and he said that he had a lot of this on tape.
He had a lot of what?
The conversations on tape.
Oh yes, and someone will have to be very, very careful refuting what he said because I don't know if. I don't think these people might have known that they were being tape recorded. I think that may be illegal. You're supposed to tell people if you're tape recording them, but I think today we have to assume that every time we walk out the door, someone is tape recording us or taking our pictures or listening to us on the phone. So you should, if you have great secrets to pass, do them only in a whisper in the dead of night, okay?
I now go into rooms when I want to say something and say, is this room, bugged or anything?
I'm sorry, what?
Is this room bugged or something like that? When I go to tell someone something?
No, I live in a bug-free environment. Actually, I don't, I am living in another era. I do not, I do not make a lot of. I don't send faxes. I don't send emails. I mean, I always have someone do it for me, but I really sort of cut myself off because my phone was ringing all the time. Once you start writing books, and particularly about Hollywood or politics, you get. In fact, I told you once, I think Steve Bannon called up, and I never heard of him before. And he wanted to have dinner with our friend and my publisher, Danforth Prince. That was interesting. That should have been tape recorded.
Right. You never did, though, did you?
No. And since that, I didn't even know who he was. I think in a few weeks I sure found out, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Well, this is the big problem with all this is that we really are supposed to be running a country, not worrying about all this.
Yes, I know. Well, it's really sort of like a soap opera.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, this is going to explode in some very unusual way, but I predicted that 2017 would be a great year for journalists, and it really is. And I'm not going to write about politicians anymore because I'm much more interested in the time I have on this planet. I have at least 10 books I want to get out because of the golden age Hollywood, and I have all this material that I have collected on some very famous people that we never learned their entire story. For example, we've heard there's a lot out there on John Wayne, but the true and story, say, of Gary Cooper has never been told, and in many ways, Gary Cooper was just a bigger star than John Wayne, and I would hate to leave this planet and not do some of this material that I've gathered over 50 years.
Yes, only you, I believe, could pull all this off. So you should do this. Who else are you thinking of?
Would you say
Who
that
else?
again?
Who else are you thinking of? I think this is your phone connection, not us, because.
I think it's. Yes, I don't know what it is. I've never had this before.
Oh, wait, is it us? He says it is. It is our station. He apologizes. It's something to do with our radio waves here, and he apologizes. But keep going, because hear. Listen, Darwin, we hear you perfectly. It's coming through on our line, so you keep going.
Well, that's just the most important thing. I'm going to depart one thing from my devoting myself to Golden Age Hollywood, because for the next few months I'm going to be dealing in the world of Hugh Hefner and the Playboy magazine, and it's certainly not going to. I'm not going to do this. You can do seduction of bunnies, but if you do that for year after year, that would get monotonous. But I'm going to try to take his story from the standpoint of how he affected the sexual revolution in America, and also how he was actually a champion of many fine causes, including civil rights, LGBT equality, and he fought the censorship battle, which he became one of the great champions of the First Amendment. So it's just not going to be about bunnies. Plus, I've got all of these quotes from people who give their opinions of Hugh Hefner, and they range from Marilyn Monroe to Jane Mansfield to Tennessee Williams to, are you ready, Donald Trump.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to let a lot of other people write the book for me.
Well, you do that. You do a good job of that. Yes.
Well, I think it's very interesting. Of course, Jane Mansfield or Marilyn Monroe's opinion of Trump was different but I thought the most amusing thing I got was from Tennessee Williams.
Oh, what was it?
Well, it's difficult to.
Okay.
But in brief, he proposed an idea which sounded absolutely ridiculous at the time, but has now since been done. He thought that instead of just the nude centerfold, it should be a centerfold of a nude man and a nude woman acting together.
Aha! That would have been interesting.
Well, then Hefner's competition, Bob Guccione of Penthouse, actually started doing that. So Tennessee's idea was not that far-fetched, you know.
Right. Well, let me just tell you that it's always such a great pleasure, you know, talking to you. I have to tell you that. And I hope you stay warm.
Oh, well, it's really terrible up here. And the main thing that I feel sorry for the people who actually have to go out and work in this condition. And I think it's going to last a long time. And the problem in a big city like this, there's some people homeless and various other things. It's just a bad time all around. But although I grew up in Florida, you know, I covered such countries as North Finland and Iceland and Greenland for the Frommer Guides, and on one trip I went to the Antarctic, so I really know what cold weather is like. But this is sort of unbearable, though. It's unless you just are right over the fireplace, you're really cold. It's a very cold place right now, and there's a shortage of fuel. So we'll get through it. You know, New Yorkers are tough. Actually, the people in Boston are having it worse. So I want you to enjoy that wonderful, wonderful weather of Florida.
You're right.
I only remember 2 snowfalls in Miami. How many do you remember?
None.
What do you mean? You grew up in
I
Florida,
know, but I don't remember it snowing, did it?
Yes. You do, really? I'm surprised because, you know, it had, I mean, you can look it up. Do you know, I was once in the northern Bahamas and it snowed. Now, the snow just came down in flakes and very light, and it melted before it hit the sidewalk. But, yes, I remember, I think it was, the last one was in 1957. Oh, we're going way back. So if it's snowing in Miami, you could imagine what weather would be like in New York, couldn't you?
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, well, but it is pretty bad. I know I just heard a report on Boston, what was happening. But listen,
Right now, I'm fantasizing about you sitting there in a bathing suit in 50-degree weather, which would be like... That would be like a heat wave.
Yeah. Oh, you're good. That's great. Well, Darwin, this has been extraordinary. Thank you. And we will talk again soon.
Indeed. And take care now.
Stay warm.
And a good, happy, healthy, prosperous New Year.
Same to you, honey. Same to you. Bye.
Bye now.